Hey there, I'm Anarchy Ass. We're out at Berman, Illinois today. Cermak Shopping Plaza, one of the most controversial shopping centers in America. But why? I'm going to look at the history of it today and some of the more notable pieces of art that have adorned the shopping center over the years. Off in the foreground, you can see the Cermak Plaza shopping center sign. On the corner of Harlem and Cermak, named after Anton Cermak, the mayor of Berman, who many people don't know was shot stopping a presidential assassination, and is really something of an American hero. I don't know why that isn't focused upon in Berman. There are no statues to him. He does have a street named after him, but that's about the full extent of it. Without further ado, though, I want to get into the history of this shopping center. It's located at 7001 to 7191 Harlem Avenue, so it takes up a whole city block. It opened in 1956 and was created by three people: a financier, a contractor, and the primary brains behind the operation, this man. This is somebody who most wouldn't know if they saw him on the street. He is long dead now. This is David Berman. David Berman owned the plaza through the 70s and 80s. He not only designed it, but also owned it, and was responsible for bringing in some highly controversial art. And I don't know why it was so controversial. We'll see some examples of it today. But he was really a huge patron of the arts and had a lot of money to spend on it. And as a result, brought forth a lot of it to the shopping center. Shopping centers, it should be stated, are not well known throughout America. They're built in what is largely known as prefab architecture, as this one is. It's prefabrication. Buildings are built elsewhere and then stuck together like giant Legos. But perhaps to amuse himself, or perhaps to really showcase his own personal taste in art, David Berman began bringing in huge pieces of large-scale art. The shopping center sign off in the foreground that you're looking at now once was replaced by this. This is a garbage structure. It's literally garbage cemented together, entitled Big Billboard, ostensibly a monument to the garbage strike. There was a huge strike on the part of garbage men in Berman, and as a result, garbage collection ceased. It was a major event in the town, and a rather disgusting one. And after it was over, this was erected, and the town hated it. Immediately, they started trying to get it torn down, and this was not the first or the last piece that met with that kind of reaction to the local public. This area that I'm sitting in now, which is now just cement, once housed this. This is art that children can play on. Big Billboard was made by Nancy Rubens, a world-renowned sculpture artist, and it stood from 1980 until 1993, until the town succeeded in getting it torn down. It was partially taken down as a result of structural problems. The cement was cracking and breaking as a result of the constant freezing and thawing of this area. This is a suburb of Chicago and subjected to the Chicago winters. The original Cermak signs were replaced with the ones you see now in 2010. 2010 was a pivotal year for this shopping center, and I'll get into the reasons why momentarily. But first I want to show you a couple other pieces of art. This is Pinto Pelt. It's literally a Ford Pinto body plastered to a wall with cloud device up in the background. It's a mobile. Those spun in the wind, much like this photo is now. These are both gone now. Here's a really cool pinball clock. I don't know if you can see that. It's upside down. There you go. Pinballs would drop and make this clock work. This still exists, although it's been moved. And we're going to see that later as well. But the most important and the largest piece of art to adorn this shopping center, by far, was a piece called Spindle by Dustin Schuler, which stood from 1989 until May 2nd, 2008. And it looked like this. It was literally a giant spike in the ground with cars impaled upon it. It was entitled Spindle because it resembled a desk spindle. If you remember back in the 80s and earlier, when desks would have a little spike on them and receipts would be stuck on them, that's what inspired him to construct this in that manner. And as you can see, it's just cars on a spike, and it's in a parking lot, so there's cars here anyway. I don't really know why the public objected to this so much, but they hated it. And organized efforts were employed to demolish it and destroy it. This is important for another reason. It catapulted Cermak Plaza from just being a locally controversial place of art into an international one. When this sculpture was featured in the comedy blockbuster, the international comedy blockbuster Wayne's World, the characters drive through Berwyn, and this sculpture is shown. And from that point on, Berwyn became synonymous with the Spindle, and Cermak Plaza became internationally known. And I am talking about from the 1990s onward, because this was torn down also in 2008, but there rumors persisted that until 2010 that it would be rebuilt. It was not. And even though it's gone, and has been for over a dozen years, 14 years really, and counting, Berwyn is still known for this, and it hasn't been forgotten. People make it and sell it on t-shirts, in posters. I've seen it displayed in picture frames. And it was community effort that got rid of it, combined with the desire of the local Walgreens to move. To the location where it stood. Walgreens had been the only remaining store from the original grand opening in 1956. We're going to take a little walk around Cermak Plaza now and see some of the locations where this art once was, including that of the Spindle. If I pan over this way, you'll see this great clock. You can see how the balls just go down these racks, and they set off this symbol, which I think is every hour. If we step around this side, you can see the clock face. And the numbers. It's on rollers. It was moved from its original location that I depicted earlier to this present one. And it's sealed in glass. Cermak Plaza is laid out in an L shape. If we pan over here, you'll see a McDonald's that was originally a Yankee Doodle, which was a restaurant chain in the 1950s. In the early 1980s, it was replaced with a McDonald's, but not the one that you see standing now, one that was known as the floating McDonald's. And I wish I could show you that. It's long gone and it's been replaced with the current location, but it was built on glass and appeared to be floating from a distance, when in reality the lining around the base of the foundation was transparent glass. It was sadly torn down and replaced with the current location. Much of this was done after the year 2010, when David Berman unfortunately passed away. And that was the real pivotal year, because he had personally fought to keep all of this art. He had personally brought it all in and oversaw it. And when he passed away, the management of Cermak Plaza did not have his drive and his conviction to continue this artwork, and that's why a lot of it started to go away. If we walk this way, you'll see the Walgreens that I mentioned, and that was the location of the Spindle, almost. The really sad part about the Spindle story is that it was ripped down ostensibly to build this Walgreens that ended up not standing in the spot where the Spindle was. We're going to go over there if traffic will permit me. You can see the original location of the Spindle, which is now just empty lot. Seagulls mourning the location of the Spindle. You can see this Walgreens is really more towards Cermak than the Spindle was. And we are in the approximate location of the Spindle. You can see the bank in the foreground of the picture. And there's the bank now, so it would have been more in this area. Nobody comes out here to see these empty parking spaces. These empty parking spaces aren't featured in international films. Nobody's printing pictures of them on t-shirts and making pilgrimages to see them. But they did all those things with this. 2008, 2022. 2008, 2022. I've said it many times, but I'll say it again because it's worth repeating. When major works of art or buildings or anything of a unique nature that is upheld and beloved by popular culture, by the arts, by the world community, when it's gone forever. The cars from the Spindle were removed under cover of darkness to avoid people noticing. Even though they did, protesters still came out, and they were put into storage. Where they are now, I don't know. The location is said to be multiple locations, so it could be rebuilt. The artist himself is also passed away, and is not around to fight for his art or see it rebuilt. It would have to be rebuilt by somebody other than Schuler himself if it were to take place. The salt in the wound to the Spindle story is that another mall rebuilt a model of the Spindle in the Chicagoland area. And it currently can be seen at the Stratford Square Mall in Bloomington, Illinois. So if you're ever in Bloomington and you want to see the Spindle, you can. And even sadder, apparently people think that that is the original Spindle, and it's not. It's a smaller version, and it's indoors. But it does exist in Bloomington. It is built as an exact replica, so if you want to see what the Spindle looked like, you can, but it won't be the original, and it won't have the size and the magnitude of the original. I was fortunate enough to see it when it did exist many times, and it really was awesome, and I mean that in the genuine sense of the word. It was just awe-inspiring and just a massive, epic piece of art that towered over everything. You could not miss it. If you were in the area with it, then you had to see it. You had no choice. This area that I'm standing in now provides a good view of the layout of Cermak Plaza. You can see how the L extends. It starts over at that K and G. That's where the original Walgreens was, circa 1956 through the early 2000s. These stores have changed hands so many times that I could not possibly cover them all in this episode. There was a service merchandise where Party City is now, and a grocery store known affectionately as the Egg Store which was here for many years, where Tony's is now. All the way down by the Ross was a pizza place where kids used to hang out after school. Morton West High School is next door. And then when you pan over here, where this guy just had to run his truck, you can see this Shoe Carnival and Dollar Tree and Office Depot. There was a Circuit City where the Office Depot is. And that's the way it remained until the early 2000s. Prior to that, those stores had all changed hands many times. There were also stores around the back of what is now the Ross, facing east, and they are not there. It's just a brick wall. But much of this art lined the walls and the walkway in front of these stores. And if we go over there now and walk along, we'll see what remnants still might remain. The lovely soundtrack of the parking lot. These open walkways were somewhat larger than what you find in typical shopping centers, because Berman knew he wanted to house his art here. You can see how there's an overhang that allows for minimal protection against the weather, and really protected the art well when it was here. We walk down here. There used to be a great example of interactive art. Some of this art could be handled by the public. And right here, you can see the bank in the background as a focal point. Was this. This is stainless steel instruments that could be played using rubber mallets. They were hard rubber, and kids used to play them. And it was one of the more popular pieces of artwork to adorn the shopping center. And it is now sadly gone. 2010, 2022. 2010, 2022. If we look east and proceed, you'll see these giant circular cement balls that are meant to stop cars, not to be art. I don't recall the name of the pizza place that was down on the corner, but I do recall kids from Morton West just absolutely loving it and hanging out there regularly. It's now a Ross Dress for Less. which has also swallowed up a lot of what used to be the other stores. This is the very end. For many years, this store here was a fruitful yield location, which lasted from the 1970s into the 90s. This is the blank wall that is now part of Ross, that in the 1950s was additional storefronts. And the storefronts ran the entire length of the building all the way to the corner. You can see the building way off in the foreground. That is Morton West High School, which currently has over 3,000 students. Even in the early 1990s and late 1980s, it had over 2,000 kids. So it's almost like its own little town in terms of population. There are towns in Illinois that don't have 3,000 people. And as a result, as soon as that bell rings at the end of the day, this shopping center has instant customers. Many of whom utilize this parking space that exists behind Cermak Plaza and between Morton West, and it's shared with the school. It's long been used by students to park their cars. So just to get to their cars, they're forced to walk towards the shopping center. And this giant expansive wall is completely new. When the storefronts were ripped out, they replaced the entire wall up to the roof, which is a poured tar flat roof. And you can see on the end where the original wall was. It's got this beige brick. I shouldn't say original, but prior to this other wall being built, it was the corner. It's got a little bit of ornamentation on it, which I believe is limestone. The entrance to the pizza place was around the side. You can see where it ended and where the new wall starts. And the door was right here. Cermak Plaza, Berwyn, Illinois. Home to the legendary Spindle. Now, the home to nothing artistic. But it's still here. And it's still worth seeing if you're ever in the area. In a time period when retail stores are really hurting, it would have been nice to have a unique location which would draw people to see the museum quality art that adorned it, but which it now doesn't have. Sadly, a lot of the art was destroyed and not sold, which, again, insult to injury. But then again, I guess destroyers of the art are not usually known for their common sense. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'll be back with more local history in the future.